Hello and welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Michael Salmi, and I'm a data scientist at Salesforce. I'll be talking about computational photography and some deep learning applications. This talk is a bit different from the talks that I typically give. It's not a standard research talk. It's more of a survey talk. And it's about things that I wasn't involved in at all, but things that are very interesting nonetheless. We'll start by giving a brief overview of the subject, CP, and then I'm going to talk about how to accelerate image processing with deep neural nets, and we'll end with some remarks on research directions and open problems. So I'd like to start with a few examples. A paper from NVIDIA came out at the end of last year, and it's pretty famous. They've developed nets that have the unprecedented ability to generate photorealistic faces. And in this now famous paper, they were able to produce all of these fake celebrities. And they did this by introducing a new training method, a GAN-based training method, and it's very, very promising work, very exciting stuff. Another NVIDIA paper, this was just a month ago or so, came out where they give a method of image inpainting. So what they're doing here is filling in the missing pixels or corrupted holes, irregularly shaped corruptions in images with computer-generated alternatives. And obviously, the implications for photo editing software are immense. And everyone's favorite example is style transfer, aka image-to-image translation. So this is a wonderful class of problems where you want to translate a Picasso painting into a mountain, vice versa. So the goal is to learn a mapping between an input image and a target image. And these don't have to be paired things. They can just be general collections of images. So we now have the ability to, at high resolution, learn collection style transfer, to do object transfiguration, all of these magical things like seasonality transfer. Yeah, so this is really useful in photo enhancement. Obviously, you get lots of new families of interesting, exciting filters. And it can be used for software art as well. This is my cat Starbuck, and as an example of what you can do, maybe what's coming in the future, is learning styles based on image quality models to automatically learn to segment an image into where the regions look interesting that would be optimally served by applying some style transform from some large bank of filters. And they're all really fun to look at. So what is CP? Well, it's a great field. It's really rich, multidisciplinary. And because today, instead of photons landing on a silver halide sensor, we have a modern pipeline of optics and post-sensing computation that fits in the pockets of 3 billion people. And CP powers that software. It blends computer vision with graphics, photography, and involves methods from signals processing to optics. It's a great field, but you can think of it as a bag of tools to manipulate, enhance, combine, and synthesize images, the most famous example of which is HDR. The HDR algorithm can show high levels of detail and can basically rebuild the color profiles in images where the exposures are wrong. You can do this from a single image. You could focus stack. That's another method that's used in macro photography to generate an image that has good properties at all scale, all focal depths. And an example of deep learning applied to these techniques was done last year at GTC by Daniel Ambrosi, a software artist and photographer who worked with NVIDIA to create these beautiful HDR panoramas that he stitched together from multi-hundred megapixel images. So you have cubic arrays of multiple photos wide by multiple views high by multiple exposures deep, and you want to combine these into a very large panoramic that's immersive, and you want to apply things like Deep Dream. And so it's very non-trivial to do this efficiently, but they were able to modify the Deep Dream algorithm to work, and each of these images takes 10 hours. So this, on a V100, that's like 9 quadrillion floating point operations. It's pretty impressive work. So that was one recent highlight I wanted to show. So other methods, color tone operations. You can fix the areas and images that are particularly underexposed by compressing the range of luminance values while preserving local spatial features. And one thing that I'm really excited for is an advancement in CP that's going to make the night photos you take a lot better. Imaging in low light is challenging because there's only so many photons that land, and you get these grainy, terrible photos. But in a recent paper, Learning to See in the Dark, Chen et al., they give a new deep learning method. They introduce a new data set to train on and to test on. And what they're able to do is denoise the image by training end-to-end a fully convolutional network. And this operates directly on the raw sensor data, which is something that traditional pipelines can't do. If you take a photo and it looks completely black in its JPEG, you can still recover on the right is their approach, and it looks really great. So this is exciting and probably coming to an iPhone near you. There's all sorts of higher level analyses you can do on images. You want to find a piece of bone. You want to segment, what pixels correspond to a certain heart valve. And the classic thing to do is apply, a box matrix filter or something, and do all these complicated, fragile computer vision pipelines. And one exciting deep learning paper that just came out a month ago that highlights one field that I'm super excited about. Biomedical imaging is going to be totally transformed by deep learning. This paper, what they did was they had, at the Gladstone Institute, basically 5 terabytes of data coming in off of these robotic microscope cameras every day. And to deal with that load of data, they showed how they trained a deep neural net to predict the identity of cell features in microscope images, and they do this at very, very high regimes of accuracy. So computational photography, in summary, there's this wonderful quote by Ramesh Raskar of the Media Lab, and I like to think of it as sort of the continual development of algorithms for overcoming the current limitations of conventional imaging, but he makes it sound a lot more lofty. But I hope you have an appreciation for what computational photography is now, and I wanted to then dive into what was probably my favorite paper of last year by. So this picture that you're seeing here is an image taken and processed with a filter that was invented in the early 2000s. And they're able to basically transfer style back in 2006 of an Ansel Adams photo into any photo. And it's a beautiful paper, really fun, but it takes 10 seconds, 50 seconds on MATLAB code on large images. It's very bad. And so what they did was they made it a lot faster. So this example here is what you used to do to make images better. So one typical algorithm to use is local Laplacian filter. And in Halide, what they're doing here is you take your image, you convert it to grayscale, you pad it, and then you do all these complicated things like building a Gaussian pyramid of that image, and then sampling that image with various contrast curves, and then rebuilding the Gaussian pyramids for all of those. And this is done in Halide. This was auto-exported from the tracer feature. And then you merge those images down, and you reintroduce color from the original image. And the whole thing takes a long time, and you've got a really great, you can do non-local dehazing, you can do all these different image manipulations this way, but it's expensive. And so they said, how can we use deep nets to speed this up? It seems like a perfectly suitable problem and question to ask. So they introduced a paper where they took different operators, 10 different operators, and they showed that you can take a fully convolutional network and train it on input-output pairs generated by the original model. And the network can operate at full resolution. So on the top row, you have the input images. On the bottom row, you have the filtered images. And these are all done using a single forward pass on a dilated, fully convolutional network. And there's so many acronyms, it's crazy to keep track of them all. But it's based on the idea of a dilated convolution. So on the left, you have a normal convolution, 3x3 kernel, with padding, one padding, and one dilation. Here you have, on the right, you have the actual dilated convolution. And this was used to great effect in the WaveNet paper. And to visualize it, you can think of that image being transformed with a dilated convolution as the dilation factor goes from 1 to 10. Right? You get this spread of the pixels. So that's sort of the visual intuition of what's going on in that operator. And if you do it at multiple dilation factors, deeper and deeper in your network, you get these things called multi-scale context aggregation networks. Context aggregation networks were introduced by Fisher Yu, and this is an example of one that was used to make these image processing filters very fast. So as you see in the dilation row, the dilation is going up exponentially, right? That was sort of the key intuition in this paper. And this is their network. This is their fully convolutional dilated network in code. Very simple, only have convolution layers. That's why it's fully convolutional. And so they trained this on MIT Adobe dataset. And then I retrained it on the same set, but changing the architecture slightly. I'm going to show you some of the results. So it takes this image and it outputs that image. And it's just really beautiful operators. Since it's a single forward pass and you get the full resolution filtered image, you can do this in single milliseconds as opposed to orders of magnitude slower. And yeah, so I refer to that paper. And this last video, this is from let me go back. This is from Vladlen LeCun's Intel team. They encoded all of these operators into a single neural network, and they use this awesome trick where if you add dimensionality into the input, instead of a 3 tensor for an RGB image, you use like a 13 tensor, and you can encode the bitwise masks into those channels. And what you can do is go interpolate between them. And it learns a smooth interpolation, which was really surprising to me. I couldn't believe it, because it was never trained to do that. But yeah, so great stuff. It had some issues. There were some warping, some artifacts here and there. But I found that when you retrain the net, you can get rid of all of them if you switch out the activations for different types of activations. So you swap out for ALU activations, and you increase the number of channels in the convolutional layers, and you can get rid of them pretty well. So that was a great paper, and you should read it. I wanted to close by just talking about sort of software art in general. And what I'm excited about in the near-term future. So there's so many great research areas and opportunities for using deep learning in CP. Some of them are more technical than others. There's some low-hanging fruit. I mean, whoever does a GAN paper based on, using capsule nets, that probably win an award. But if you step back and you just think about all the great stuff we can do right now with imaging, we're basically rivaling human artists' creativity and surpassing it. So on the left, you have, from Rutgers, a CAN network. And the right, you have Harold Cohen, a famous software artist, some of his works. These are all machine generated. And in a study done in Basel a year ago, they did a visual Turing test, and it turned out that humans actually like the computer-generated art better than the human art, which I thought fascinating. This is for photography as well. So tomorrow, what can we do? What can we expect? Well, everything's going to be in super high resolution, running real time. I would like to see style transfer applied to different mediums. So if you need to generate a 3D landscape for a video game or some virtual reality world, you can do that from a DALL-E painting and just walk into it. There are many ways of using the existing GAN technologies but combining them optimally to make some really great choices for artificially generated paintings. But new styles is what I'm interested in. Novelty search methods are going to be great for coming up with entirely new art forms, not just copying art. And so it's an exciting area. And the conclusion is that FCNs, right, they're a little bit memory intensive, but eventually they'll be running on your iPhones, and you'll have all these amazing filters running in a single neural net in real time. So you can extend this to video processing and all this other stuff. If you're interested in doing this sort of research or anything deep learning related, check out. We have a lot of papers coming out in the next year at einstein.ai/research. And if you're interested in any of these ideas, please connect with me at my Gmail or Twitter. Thank you.